Birdman. Li Fu walked into the water, pushing the little raft in front of him. He wiped a tear from his eye and sadly tied a vase to the mast. Then he pushed the raft out into sea and walked back towards the rocky shore. The raft drifted slowly out into the vast Indian Ocean. Li Fu knew that he would never see it again. Sean flapped his wings nervously. It was a long way down to the beach. Everything was set, the feathers were glued on really well, the wooden struts were strong, but would he fly? "Go on," said Spider. "There's only one way to find out." Deefa barked loudly and ran around their legs waiting for the fun. "Oh, it's all right for you," said Sean. "You're not going in the competition." Suddenly he ran towards the edge of the sand dune and jumped. He plunged into mid-air and flapped his arms furiously. Panic filled his face. He flapped harder. "No!" he yelled. "No!" He plunged down, rolled over into the sand and lay still. Spider ran down to meet him. "Are you okay?" he shouted. Sean lifted up a sandy face and nodded. He undid his wings and left them on the sand. "It'll never work," said Spider. "You'll never win the Birdman competition like that. You can't jump off the end of the pier in those." "It doesn't matter," said Sean. "I'm going to pick up Uncle Jeremy's hang glider this afternoon. A real one. You watch me fly over the waves when I get that. This year, Buggins isn't going to win for once." The two boys walked along the edge of the water. Neither of them noticed the raft at first. Sean suddenly did 6 cartwheels along the beach. "Beat that," he said. "That's nothing," said Spider. "Watch this." He tried to stand on his hands but collapsed onto his face. He stood up and spat out sand. "What, that one didn't count," he grinned. He tried again and the same thing happened. His whole face was covered in sand. It didn't matter how often he tried, Spider just couldn't do cartwheels, not to save his life. "Weak," said a loud voice. They both looked up. It was Buggins, big fat Buggins sitting up there on Devil, his big fat horse. He walked Devil past Sean and Spider and then backed up into them. The horse's legs stumbled and spat up sand. Sean and Spider fell back into the waves. Buggins stared down at them with a smug smile. Then he nodded towards Sean's wings on the beach. "You'll never win with those," he scoffed. "You just watch me tomorrow. I'll take the trophy off again for sure." He kicked his horse and galloped along the beach. "Oh, look!" yelled Sean. "The dirty rack bag!" Buggins galloped straight towards Sean's wings. Devil's hooves pounded into the feathers and plastic. The wings were smashed to pieces. Sean and Spider stared in dismay. The wings were completely ruined. And to make matters worse, there on top of them was a pile of steaming horse manure, dropped there by Devil. Deefa loved horse manure. He barked twice and shoved his face right in it. He pushed his nose into the putrid pile. He rubbed his ears in too. It was a dog's heaven. Buggins stopped a little way off. He felt safe sitting up there on Devil. "You wait," yelled Sean. "You just wait." It was a weak thing to say and he knew it. He was so angry that he just couldn't think of anything else. Buggins laughed horribly and galloped away along the beach. With a weary heart, Sean watched him disappear. "Don't worry," said Spider. "You still got your uncle's hang glider. These wings didn't work anyway." Suddenly Sean saw something. "Look!" he screamed. "Over there!" He pointed to where the edge of a little raft poked out of the sand. Spider started to scratch away at the sand with his hands. Sean ran over and helped. "Wow!" said Spider. "I wonder where this came from." The raft had been washed in by the tide. After a bit of tugging and digging, they finally pulled it out. They stared at the strange vase tied to the mast. "There could be anything in there," said Spider. "Open it up," said Sean. Sean brushed at the sand on the vase. There was weird writing on the outside and a skull and crossbones. They looked at each other and shrugged. Neither wanted to be the one to open the vase. In the end, Sean grabbed the lid and pulled. It came off with a pop. A whiff of grey smoke puffed out. Spider moved back up the beach to safety. Sean looked at his mate. Spider was a good kid, but he could be a bit of a wimp sometimes. Sean carefully untied the vase and tipped it up. An animal slipped out. A stiff, hard animal like a cat. They stared at the rigid body. Its eyes were closed. Its fur was matted and wiry. Its legs hung down like open arms. "Wow!" Sean whistled. "I've never seen anything like that before." He turned it upside down. It was hollow in the middle. "It's a hat," said Spider. "A cat hat. Give me a go." He snatched the cat from Sean's arms. "Don't wreck it," said Sean. "It could be valuable." Spider put the cat hat on his head. The legs reached down under his chin. It looked as if the cat was hanging onto his face. It seemed weird perched up there on Spider's hair. "Give me a shot," said Sean. Spider shook his head. He was very attached to the hat. Sean smiled to himself. "OK," he said. "Suit yourself." He walked towards the wings and pretended he wasn't interested in the cat hat. He did another 5 cartwheels right past Spider. The cat hat's eyes clicked open. It saw a boy turning. Cartwheels on the sand. The eyes clicked closed again. Spider, who was still wearing the cat hat, stared at Sean with a funny sort of look on his face. Then he did 5 perfect cartwheels on the sand. They were terrific. "Wow!" Sean yelled. "Good one, Spider! Fantastic!" Sean was really impressed. Spider could do fantastic cartwheels, and just a minute before he couldn't even stand on his hands. Spider looked pretty surprised himself. He shook his head wisely. "You can learn a lot from me, Sean," he said. He brushed down the cat hat. "Maybe it brings good luck," said Sean. "Yeah," said Spider, "like a lucky rabbit's foot." They walked back up the track towards home. On the edge of the cliff, a fat man was standing looking out to sea. He suddenly opened his mouth and burped loudly. The cat hat's eyes clicked open. It saw a man burping. The eyes clicked closed again. Spider suddenly felt ill, as if he'd eaten about 50 meat pies for breakfast. He tried to swallow but couldn't. He tried to hold everything down, but it was no use. Spider opened his mouth and let out an enormous burp. "Beauty!" yelled Sean. "What a ripper!" He was filled with admiration. Spider was pleased with himself. He usually couldn't do very good burps at all. That afternoon, Spider and Sean went down to the railway station to pick up Uncle Jeremy's hang glider. Spider still had the cat hat perched on his head. The bloke in the railway station pretended that the boys weren't there, like railway workers often do. "Excuse me," Sean said. "We've come for a hang glider." The bloke didn't take any notice. He just went on reading a magazine. Sean tapped on the windowsill with a coin. The porter looked up savagely. "Can't you see I'm busy?" he growled in a deep voice. "Wait your turn." Sean and Spider looked around. There wasn't another person in sight. After ages and ages, the porter came to the window. "Where's your receipt?" he asked. "I lost it," Sean said, "but the hang glider's addressed to Sean Tuttle." This is when Sean heard the terrible words. "It's not here. Sean Tuttle picked it up this morning. He was with 2 other kids." "What?" Sean yelled. "Which kids?" "I don't know, just kids." "Buggins!" Sean shouted. "And Thistle and Wolf," added Spider. "They've nicked it." "You're responsible," Sean said to the porter. "The railways have got to get it back. Buggins didn't have a receipt." The porter glared at them. "And neither do you," he said. "You kids buzz off and don't tell me how to do my job." He was starting to get angry. The cat hat's eyes clicked open. It saw a porter talking. The eyes clicked closed again. Spider spoke in a deep man's voice. He sounded exactly like the porter. A great big booming voice coming out of a boy's mouth. "You kids buzz off," he said, "and don't tell me how to do my job." "Right," yelled the porter. Man, was he mad. He headed for the door. Spider and Sean turned and ran for it. "You shouldn't have done that, Spider," Sean said, when they finally stopped running. "It was this hat," Spider said. "It made me do it. And its eyes open. I'm sure I heard its eyes click that time I burped." He took the cat hat off his head. "Here, you have it." When they reached home, Sean's father was looking a bit sheepish. "Is she talking to you yet?" asked Sean. His father shook his head. Sean smiled to himself. Poor Dad. He was in big trouble. He had agreed to let Sean fly in the Birdman competition without telling Mum, and she was mad at him. She thought it was too dangerous. And Dad tried to kid her and joke about it, but she wouldn't even crack a smile. "Buggins has pinched the hang glider," said Sean. Mr. Tuttle didn't hear him. He was peering anxiously out of the window. His wife was heading for the door. He held a finger up to his lips. "Shh," he said. "Not a word about it in front of your mother." He suddenly saw the cat hat. "What on earth is that?" "A cat hat," Sean told him. "It brings good luck if you put it on your head." Mr. Tuttle took the cat hat and put it on his own head. "I can do with a bit of good luck today," he said with a grin. "This might cheer Mum up a bit." Then a number of things happened. The door opened and Mum walked in. She said exactly the same thing. "What on earth is that?" Mr. Tuttle sure did look stupid with a dead cat perched on his head. Sean's mum wasn't alone. Deefa had come in after her, a very hungry Deefa. He gave 2 woofs and trotted over to the food bowl, which was still on the floor. It was full of that horrible canned food that dogs love, a sort of wobbling mound of brown jelly. Deefa trotted over and started to gobble away noisily. The cat hat's eyes clicked open. It saw a dog eating a plate of dog food. The eyes clicked closed again. A strange look came into Mr. Tuttle's eyes. He dropped down onto his hands and knees. "Woof, woof," he said. He trotted over to the food bowl and started gobbling at the dog food with Deefa. They licked their lips and swallowed the stuff down like crazy. The kids' eyes nearly popped out of their heads. So did Sean's mum's. No one could believe what they were seeing. Mr. Tuttle was eating yucky cold dog food from the same bowl as the dog. Deefa growled, and Mr. Tuttle barked back. They were fighting over the dog food. And Mr. Tuttle suddenly stood up with a wild look in his eyes. He didn't know what was going on. He was confused, and his face was smeared with gravy and bits of horrible meat stuff. "Ruth!" he gasped. I didn't mean to do that. It wasn't what..." His voice trailed off. He didn't know what to say. Then he grinned. Mrs. Tuttle was trying hard not to smile, but she couldn't stop herself. "What's for dessert?" she said with a chuckle. The row was over. They were talking again. Still and all, Sean thought it was better not to mention the stolen hang glider. He and Spider were on their own. Sean looked at the hat. He suddenly had an idea, but he pushed it out of his mind. His glider was gone. Buggins and his mates had stolen it. Life just wasn't fair sometimes. "We'll have to use our own plane like all the other kids," Sean said to Spider. They were walking along the cliff looking for Buggins. "What about the cat hat?" said Spider. "It copies things. It opens its eyes and copies what it sees." "I know it does." "It's dangerous," Sean told him. "You never know what it's going to stare at. Look what happened to Dad." "We could figure something out," said Spider. "If you wore the cat and it opened its eyes and saw something." "We could figure something out," said Spider. "If you wore the cat and it opened its eyes and saw something." His voice was drowned out by a roar. They both looked up as a jumbo jet streaked across the sky. Before he could think any more about it, Sean saw what he'd been looking for. It was Buggins and his mates. Buggins took a short run along the top of a sand dune and launched into the air. He clung onto a wonderful red and blue hang glider, Sean's hang glider. Buggins stooped about 3 metres above the sand, then did a wobbly landing on the beach. Wolf and Thistle pelted down after him. "Oh, fantastic!" yelled Thistle. "We're on to a winner," said Wolf. "My winner," said Sean in a tough voice. "You stole my hang glider." Buggins looked up. "Get real," he sneered. "I've been saving up for months. Ask Dad if you like." "Hand it over," Sean said. Buggins bunched up his fists. "Come and get it," he jeered. He walked towards Sean with heavy steps. His 2 mates were next to him. "We're not scared of you," yelled Spider. "Flatten him, Sean." Buggins took another couple of steps forward. There was only one thing to do, so Sean did it. He turned and ran for his life. Spider pelted after him. How humiliating. Sean could hear Wolf, Thistle and Buggins jeering as he ran. Sean spent the rest of the day trying to mend his bird wings. He used brand new materials, plastic, wood and wire as well as feathers. After a couple of hours he put down his tools. He didn't think he could finish in time. There was only one more day left, and it was a school day.
"That'll never fly," said Spider. "The ones the kids make always crash. We need something else, a bit of help."
He held up the cat hat and winked. "No way," said Sean. "Not without testing it first, anyway." Spider looked at the broken wings.
"But they're busted,"
he said. Sean nodded. "So we'll try it out on something else." The next day, Sean took the cat hat to school. His plan was to muck around down near the oval while the athletes were practising for the school sports. There was this kid named Innes who was in year 12. He was a champion high jumper. Sean decided to hang around near him with the hat on. Cat Hat would open its eyes and see Innes, and Sean would immediately do a wonderful high jump in front of all the kids. Of course, Sean didn't know whether or not the silly thing would open its eyes. That was the only weakness with the plan. As it happened, the Cat Hat did open its eyes, just as a group of girls jogged up in their tracksuits. At that very moment, Innes was running up for a jump. Sean slipped the cat hat over his head. He had to be quick. The jump would be over in a flash. Sean quite liked the idea of doing a great leap in front of the girls. But they didn't even look at him once. They were headed into the girls' changing room. The cat hat's eyes clicked open. It saw girls going into the changing room. The eyes clicked closed again. Sean tried to stop his legs going. He hung onto the fence, but it was no good. Some inner force made him go, made him follow the girls into their changing room. It was as if he was in a trance. He jogged straight in after them. The next thing Sean knew, there he was, surrounded by girls in their changing room. He opened his mouth to cry out in horror, but nothing came out, and the girls screamed and yelled. They threw shoes. "Nerd! Weirdo!" screamed a girl called Esmeralda. Talk about terrible. Spider just shook his head and grinned while the screaming mob of girls chased Sean clear out of the school. Buggins and Thistle and Wolf saw the whole thing. They thought it was a great joke. It was the worst moment of Sean's life. He walked home with a heart full of pain. Talk about embarrassing. Before long, everyone in school would know about it. That cat hat was not to be trusted. All that he could do now was fix up his Birdman wings so that they would fly. Sean worked nearly all night. He glued and cut and nailed until finally the wings were finished. He didn't even have time to try them out. The competition started first thing in the morning. He would just have to jump off the end of the pier and hope for the best.
"You'll never beat Buggins," said Spider as they walked towards the pier. "He's got a proper hang glider."
"My hang glider," Sean said.
"Use the cat hat," said Spider. "We wait until a plane goes over, the cat hat opens its eyes, and we're off. Up, up and away."
"What do you mean we're off? It's me that'll be off, not you." "No way. That cat hat is not to be trusted. It stays in my bag out of harm's way." And that's how Sean came to be standing there on the end of the pier with his bird wings, with all the others. There were kids everywhere, 200 looking on and a mob of competitors. The planes were fantastic. They were biplanes and triplanes. They were rockets and rickety old things built on top of prams. Mostly they were made out of plastic and wood and paper. Some were like parachutes, others like helicopters. None of them had engines. The planes had to glide or be powered by human energy. You could pedal, you could flap and you could jump, but no other form of power was allowed. The winner was the one who could get the furthest away from the pier. Okay, fans," yelled Wolf. He shouted at everyone through a megaphone. "First entry in this year's Birdman competition is me." A cheer went up. Wolf's plane was in the shape of a giant beer can. His legs stuck out the bottom. His arms poked out of the side like skinny wings. His head was like a marble on the top. Everyone, including Wolf, knew what was going to happen when he jumped off the end of the pier. "This model," he yelled, "runs on brain power and force of will. It's shaped to have a minimum wind resistance." He waddled over to the side of the pier and jumped. It was a very high pier. Wolf flew through the air with the greatest of ease, like a brick, straight down. He hit the water with an enormous thunk. The beer can broke up and Wolf swam to the ladder on the side of the pier. Everyone cheered and laughed. Kids patted him on the back. If ever there was a showman, it was Wolf. Next it was the turn of a kid called Egan. He had a slide rigged up on the end of the pier. He sat up on top inside a huge bat plane. Wolf called for silence. The crowd knew that Egan had a good chance of winning. He was a serious competitor. Wolf climbed up the slide. "What are the specifications of this aircraft?" he asked. Egan sat in the cockpit dressed in a black wetsuit. He wore black goggles to match his plane.
It has a 5-metre wingspan, he said. The construction is a canvas stretched on a wooden frame. At the bottom of the ramp, it reaches a speed of 15 knots, enough to carry me 40 metres from the edge of the pier.
The crowd clapped. Everyone was impressed. Egan's helpers pushed him off, and the bat plane gathered speed. It raced down the slide and launched into the air. It swooped upwards for a second or two, then hung in the air and plunged down into the sea. And the bat pilot swam sadly back to the cheers and claps of a disappointed crowd. "The next competitor," shouted Wolf, "is Thistle." There were cheers and some boos. Thistle had a huge triplane made out of clear plastic. The 3 layers of wings were so wide that everyone had to be moved back, and the wings hung over both sides of the pier. Thistle's legs stuck out through the bottom of the fuselage. Thistle held his arms up in a boxer's victory wave. Then he ran towards the water and hurtled over the edge of the pier. The wings of the plane broke off in mid-air and Thistle torpedoed down into the water. The wings fluttered down after him. This is how it went on for ages and ages. Plane after plane plunged over the edge, and none of them got very far at all. So far the bat plane had flown the furthest from the pier. Sean's stomach felt all wobbly inside. At least if I win the competition it'll make up for me going to the girls' changing room, he thought to himself. But his heart sank. He knew he couldn't win. He felt terrible. Deefa yapped and ran around his feet. The competition was almost over. There were only 2 entries left. "And now," announced Wolf, "we have an entry from that dashing young man, Jack Buggins." Buggins gave the crowd a mock bow. Then he looked at the girls and smiled. Sean's heart sank when he saw a lot of them smiling back. Buggins pushed through the crowd and came out holding his hang glider above his head, or more correctly, Sean's hang glider. There was a gasp from the mob. It was a beautiful craft. There was no doubt at all about who was going to win. Buggins ran to the edge of the pier and launched himself off. A gentle breeze took the hang glider and lifted it into the air. Buggins sailed and swooped above the water. He circled around and even let go with one hand and waved to the crowd. And then he sailed out to sea and made a graceful landing about 50 metres away. The crowd went crazy. Buggins had won by a mile. No one had ever gone that far before. Buggins swam back to the pier with the glider. Everyone patted him on the back. He gave a victory wave and leered at Sean. "Ladies and gentlemen," said Wolf, "there is one more contestant, if you can call him that, the feathered freak, Sean Tuttle." Sean was ready, and he felt ridiculous with the 2 feathered wings strapped onto his arms. He flapped them up and down feebly. Everyone laughed. The whole lot of them. Sean looked like a plucked chook. In the distance and high above, a crop-dusting plane circled the coast.
"Put this on,"
Spider whispered urgently. He reached into the bag and pulled out the cat hat. Sean shook his head. Spider nodded towards the plane.
"This is your only chance,"
he said. Sean stared at the girls who were hanging around Buggins looking at the hang glider in admiration. "Oh, what the heck?" he said to himself. "It's worth the risk." He put the cat hat on his head and tottered over to the edge of the pier. "Tuttle is wearing a new form of life jacket," said Wolf. "When he crashes, his dead cat swims back with him." Everyone laughed, except Sean and Spider. The crop-dusting plane approached the pier. "Now," said Spider. The plane flew into a bank of clouds and disappeared. The cat hat's eyes clicked open. It saw nothing but empty sky. The eyes clicked closed again. Nothing happened. Sean stood still there shivering on the end of the pier, dressed in his foolish feathered wings, with the cat hat perched on his head. The noise of the plane disappeared into the distance. "Well, come on," said Wolf.
"Get going!" "He's scared," sneered Buggins. "Oh, what a chicken," said Thistle. "It's opened its eyes," said Spider. "But too late, the plane's gone."
"Oh, I'm done for," said Sean. He looked down onto the water. It was a long way. His legs were knocking. He couldn't bring himself to jump.
10 seconds,
yelled Wolf.
"Jump or you're disqualified."
Sean took a deep breath and stared along the pier. A seagull sat on a post. The cat hat's eyes clicked open. It saw a seagull flap its wings furiously and fly up into the sky. The eyes clicked closed again. Sean's wings started to whir. They flapped so fast that he couldn't see them. He thought his arms were going to fall off. Up he went, buzzing like a fantastic dragonfly. The water fell far below. At first Sean's head swam. The kids looked like ants on the pier. Birds fluttered around. What if he fell? But then, for some reason, he knew he was safe. He felt like a bird. He was flying as if he had been born with wings. He looped the loop, he plunged down and skimmed the waves, then soared up again above the crowd. He flew sideways and upside down. He twirled and twisted. He flapped like a feathery fiend. Everyone gasped. Their mouths fell open. Their eyes bugged out. A sigh swept the pier. Sean plunged down and buzzed just above the heads like a dive bomber. The kids threw themselves down as he hurtled overhead. It was wonderful. It was weird. Sean had no control over what was happening. He just did everything the gull did. "Yahoo!" yelled Spider. "Go, Sean, go!" He was so excited that he nearly fell off the pier. And finally, Sean and the bird settled on the waves. Sean let the wings sink and swam back to the waiting crowd. You should have heard the cheering and shouting. No one had ever seen anything like it before, and one of the girls gave him a little peck on the cheek. Buggins was mad as a snake. He pushed to the front.
"Tuttle cheated," he yelled. "That cat thing did it. It was a powered flight."
Buggins pulled the cat hat off Sean's head and put it on his own.
"It's alive," he said. "It opens its eyes. I saw it."
Buggins looked kind of pathetic with a cat hat perched on his skull. He peered along the pier to where Devil was tied up. He saw Sean's dog trotting along towards the horse. The cat hat's eyes clicked open. It saw a dog running towards the horse. It saw him pushing his head into a pile of horse manure. The eyes clicked closed again. Buggins felt his legs starting to carry him along the pier.
"No!" he screamed. "Ah, ah, ah, ah!"
But nothing could stop him rushing towards the manure.